Welcome everybody to the League of Women Voters Candidates Forum for the North Carolina Senate Districts 8 and 9 and the North Carolina State House Districts 18, 19, and 20. As a reminder to you all, we are recording tonight's session. I'm Clarice Reber, past president of the Lower Cape Fear League. As a nonpartisan political organization, the League of Women Voters encourages informed, active involvement in government. We do not endorse candidates nor support political parties. We do defend democracy by empowering voters through programs like tonight's forum and our national site for candidate information, vote411.org, where you can hear from the candidates in their own unedited words. If you would like to be better informed on issues impacting the Lower Cape Fear, I encourage you to visit our website, lwvlcf.org, or our Facebook page. And we always welcome new members, women and men. Tonight's forum is co-sponsored by the YWCA of the Lower Cape Fear and the Coastal Review Online, which is published by the North Carolina Coastal Federation. I'd like to welcome Mark Hibbs, editor of the Coastal Review Online, and Velva Jenkins, CEO of the YWCA, to speak briefly about their organizations. Velva?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Velva Jenkins, the CEO of the YWCA of the Lower Cape Fear. Thank you for agreeing to participate in tonight's forum. The YWCA mission is to eliminate racism and empower women. Although our organization does not endorse candidates or support any party, we are an organization that advocates for missions and issues that we stand for. Again, thank you for being here tonight, and we wish all of you luck.
Thank you, Velva. Mark?
Hi, I'm Mark Hibbs. I'm editor at Coastal Review Online. We're a daily news service published Monday through Friday at coastalreview.org. We cover coastal environmental news, history and culture and science news up and down the North Carolina coast. Our coverage area is North Carolina's 20 coastal counties, and you can click on the link to subscribe at coastalreview.org and receive a daily email digest with all the latest headlines. We're pleased to be the media sponsor for the League of Women Voters forums. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Now it's time to hear directly from the candidates. Our moderator tonight is Carol Ellis, chair of our league's New Hanover County Voter Services Committee. Carol, you're on.
Good evening, candidates for the North Carolina State House and Senate. We appreciate your willingness to take on the responsibility to represent our area in making law for the state of North Carolina. In November, voters will have the opportunity to choose one of you to represent Senate 8, Senate 9, and one of you to represent District 18, 19, and 20. All candidates were invited to participate in our forum. Regrettably, a few chose not to participate. I would like to say right now that Mr. Peterson said he would be here, but he had another event and he said he might be a little late, so he will be here. Tonight, the candidates present are for NC Senate 8, David Sink, NC Senate 9, Michael Lee, Ann Harper Peterson will be here. For House 18, Deborah Butler and Warren Kennedy. For House 19, Barbara Morgan. For House 20, Ted Davis and Adam Erickson. The format of our forum will be as follows. Each candidate may give a 1-minute opening statement. Then I will ask questions and the candidate will have 1 minute to answer. Once the first answer is given, I will then ask the other candidates if they have a different view or have anything to add. Each will have 1 minute for this. And finally, each candidate will be given time for a 1-minute closing statement. Candidates, you will see our timer on your screen. We ask you to pay close attention to the timer as we will let you know if you go too far over a minute. All viewers of the forum will be muted. Chat will be open and will be monitored, but no questions will be accepted from the viewers tonight. The session is being recorded on Zoom and Facebook Live. If technical issues occur during the forum and you cannot be heard, we will repair and reset the timer. If a candidate cannot see the timer due to a tech issue, an audio chime will be sounded. And now let us begin. All right, Mr. Sink, how about giving your 1-minute opening statement?
Thank you, Carol. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to the group tonight. I frequently am asked the question, why in the world are you running for the state Senate? I'm running because I'm a native North Carolinian and I care about this part of the state. I'm a product of the public school system in Lexington, North Carolina, UNC Chapel Hill. I spent 30 years in the North Carolina Community College system, and now I'm a small business owner in Brunswick County. I'm running because I care, and I know we can do better. We need clean water in this end of the state. We need to enhance our education institutions. And there's so many needs that are basically entrenched in common sense, not the least of which is the expansion of healthcare to our residents in southeastern North Carolina. We can do this by turning the state of North Carolina blue so that we can get things done. And then I can say that we did our best, and I know that we can do better.
Thank you, Mr. Sink. Mr. Lee.
Good evening. My name is Michael Lee, and I'm running for District 9 North Carolina Senate seat, and I look forward to speaking with you all this evening. I have been, I'm a lawyer here in town. I've been practicing in Wilmington since 2000. My wife and I, Heidi, have 4 children. And if some of you know me, it may not be because I served in the North Carolina Senate before, but you probably know my wife, Heidi, or one of our 4 children, Miles, Sydney, Sam, or Sawyer Lee. You know, I first ran for public office for the school board. That was when my 20-year-old was going to kindergarten. And I saw what was going on in the schools and had a passion for education. But when I started serving in the Senate, I saw how important it was to have an advocate, but not only for education issues and funding to our local schools, but funding on local issues, whether it's to nonprofits or that do great work in our community, or for beach renourishment, things like the Film Incentive Grant Program. And I look forward to serving you again and advocating for those interests.
All right, Mr. Peterson, your 1-minute opening statement, sir.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Harper Peterson. I am a husband and father of 5 and with 2 grandchildren. My wife and I are business partners. We've been here in New Hanover County for close to 50 years. In 2016, I supported the governor's agenda. It was the right direction we needed to take this state. And in 2018, the opportunity to break the supermajority, to support that agenda and sustain his vetoes against bad legislation brought forward by the Republican legislature brought me into this race in 2018. To cap that was the issues with clean drinking water in a legislature that showed a disinterest in the crisis that we face. Clean water, clean drinking water is a right for every citizen. So that brought me into the race along with healthcare, education, and good paying jobs for every citizen. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Butler.
Thank you, League of Women Voters. My name is Deb Butler. I am currently representative for House District 18. You know, one of the League's most salient issues, if not their most salient issue, is whether or not redistricting in this state and other places should be done by an independent, nonpartisan panel. That is the question to ask each and every candidate here tonight. If their answer is no, or if they waffle or equivocate, that means they care more about re-electing themselves and concentrating power instead of what's best for North Carolina. gerrymandering, racial and partisan gerrymandering is at the root of almost every ill that befalls this great state. And so let's just cut to the chase tonight, ask the candidates where they stand on that issue. And again, if they depart from the edict that comes from Speaker Moore or Speaker Pro Tem Berger, we'll know where their allegiance lies. Thank you.
Mr. Kennedy. Unmute yourself, sir. Mr. Kennedy?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Warren Kennedy. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. I am a Christian. I am a husband. I am a father. I am a grandfather. I'm a retired career law enforcement officer. This is my first time at entering the political ring, and I am the candidate for NC House District 18. I would like to put my proven communication skills and proven record of public trust to work for you in Raleigh. And I appreciate the opportunity to be with you here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Morgan.
Thank you, League of Women Voters, for the opportunity to be with you tonight. And I will follow Representative Butler's guidance and say I am absolutely in favor of nonpartisan drawing of our districts. I think that that's a very critical issue. I am a former teacher, having taught at all age levels all around the country, from Head Start, preschool, taught while I was getting my doctorate at Ohio State, was on graduate faculty at Smith College. I'm also a retired Army colonel with 25 years of active duty service. During that time, at every rank that I held, I was selected for command, and each of those decisions was based upon the fact of my demonstrated ability to solve difficult problems and work with a variety of individuals. I think that that is a good skill set to bring to Raleigh, and I am fully prepared to be your representative for District 19. Thank you.
Davis. Mr. Davis?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know what I have done, but I can hear you, but I can't see anybody. So I'll do, I don't know what I've done. But
No.
I'll do the
Punch your video. It'll be down at your left.
No, ma'am, somehow I just lost the whole shebang, and I cannot find the link to get back in. But as long as you can hear me, that's okay.
We can hear and see you.
Okay, that's great. I can't see you, but that's good. I would just like to say thank you for allowing us to be here tonight and to be heard. And I look forward to the questions that'll be asked and the responses I'll be able to give. I'd just like to say that in this time of uncertainty, we need a proven leader who can be trusted to get the job done. I have the experience and the knowledge to lead us through the challenges our state government is facing as we deal with the impact from the coronavirus on our economy, schools, and healthcare. It has been an honor and privilege to serve, and I hope that I'll have your support so that I can continue to be your voice in Raleigh. Thank you.
Mr. Erickson.
Hey everyone, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on this forum. I'm Adam Erickson, Democratic candidate for State House in District 20. Currently, I'm a public school teacher. I teach civics and coach lacrosse at New Hanover High School. I've been a resident of Wilmington for 15 years now. I've raised 2 children here with my wife. I'm running to be an advocate for our families, our students, and our teachers. I know the importance of public education as the foundation of our community. Being raised by a single mom, public schools leveled the playing field for me, allowed me a chance to go to college, graduate school. Now, I never thought I'd run for office. I thought I was doing enough in this community, but I felt an obligation to do more. So I want to represent real people who haven't had a voice, who want a place at the table and a chance at prosperity in this great state of ours. Thank you.
All right, now we will begin the questioning. And I'll start with you, Mr. Lee. Studies have shown that Chemours chemical plant discharged Gen X and other PFAS water pollution from its site into the Cape Fear River and contaminated the source of drinking water for Wilmington, Brunswick County, and Pender County. If elected, what will you do to ensure the people that our drinking water will be safe?
Well, I think we're going to follow through on the Water Safety Act, which established a statewide monitoring network, funding for DEQ for enforcement, clearing up the backlog. It gave the governor the power to shut down the polluters. And it did a lot of other things, and I've only got a minute to talk. But if you go to ncpfast.com, ncpfastnetwork.com, it'll give you all that information. What we need to do is to follow through on additional funding to continue the testing. In the first 18 months, they tested every single drinking water supply, and then they went to do their second data set to test them all again, and they ran out of money because there wasn't a budget. But what we need to do is to continue to fund it. The NC Collaboratory has funded UNC, and they have now come up with a compound that you can use to filter out all the PFAS out of the water. But we need to definitely make sure that no one else is putting PFAS or Gen X into our water supply, and the governor needs to exercise his authority as provided in the Water Safety Act to shut down any polluters.
All right, Mr. Peterson, or anyone else, do you have a comment on that question?
I would.
All right, go ahead.
This is Ted Davis. Once again, can't see you, so, but I'd just like to say that I sponsored legislation that funded the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality for testing for contaminants in the sources of our drinking water, air, groundwater wells, soil, and sediment. And I would just like to end by saying I have received a letter of acknowledgement from DEQ Secretary Michael Regan. I'd like to quickly read just a couple of these portions of it. On behalf of the Department of Environmental Quality of the state of North Carolina, I would like to thank you for your strong and dependable partnership with this agency. You have contributed to protecting the health and safety for all North Carolinians, and for that we are proud and grateful. Without your visions, innovation, and leadership, we would not be the agency we are today. Sincerely, Michael Regan. I'm very serious about dealing with the problem with contaminants, and I will continue to work with Secretary Regan and everybody else in order to keep our drinking water safe, our air safe, for all of us, children, adults, and everyone in New Hanover County, as well as surrounding regions.
Can you hear the sound, Ted? Can you hear the air horn when it goes off?
I didn't.
You
We
could.
got finished in time.
I just want to make sure you can hear the sound of the timer since you can't see it.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
That's why I was talking.
I'd like to comment,
I knew I just had a minute.
Yes, go ahead.
Madam Moderator, I'd like to comment. Whereas Mr. Lee, my opponent, has studying an investigation, which has been going on for 3.5 years, I have pushed action. This is a crisis, not something to study and come back and come up with a plan. If a house is burning, we need to put the fire out. DuPont Chemours has been polluting our water source for 40 years with not only Gen X, but hundreds of other toxic chemicals. And we see the health impacts on our populations. We have pushed, even after the Republican legislator has cut funding and staffing in DEQ, Department of Health and Human Services, and the Department of Justice. We have a Department of Environmental Quality that has put together a consent order with a judge's permit to fine Chemours, as well as require them to clean up their air and water and ground emissions. We have an Attorney General who has put together a statewide investigation into all the culprits that have been discharging PFAS chemicals into our water and air. That's action, and that's what we need.
All right, Mr. Kennedy, did you say you wanted to talk earlier? All right, Mr. Singh.
No, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Singh, go ahead.
Thank you, Carol. I want to echo two thoughts that have been said and then jump on the clean water issue. But first, we've got to address redistricting because that's keeping the incumbents in who have been not holding the corporate polluters accountable for what's going on. So we have to have fair districts that are drawn, as someone had said earlier. And I agree with Harper Peterson. It is unconscionable how in the world can these forever chemicals been dumped into our drinking source for 40 years. And it goes beyond just the water. It's now airborne. If you look at what's going on in Bladen County, the farmers have had to dump out their honey because of the groundwater that has polluted the sources that the bees use to get their honey from. And so it goes on and on. There are birth defects, there's cattle dying, and my time's up. But we've got to hold the corporate polluters accountable.
Anybody else want to speak?
Oh, I'll take a turn if I could.
Go ahead.
Yeah, safe drinking water is a human right. Everybody in North Carolina drinks the water. Everyone breathes the air. This is a priority for us. It needs to be a priority. Unfortunately, since the legislative body was taken over by Republicans in 2010, there's been a consistent and persistent undermining of environmental protections, including, as Senator Peterson mentioned, the cuts in staffing and monitoring systems in our rivers. Those need to be reestablished. We've had 40% cuts in staffing since 2013 on the DEQ. It makes it difficult to perform public safety for the people of this state. And this is a public health crisis. It's a priority. It didn't just happen. It's been going on for years, and it's time to take the lead on fixing it.
Anybody else?
I can make
Okay.
a couple of quick remarks.
Yes, sure, go ahead.
A study just came out from Harvard that it was really just a few days ago. It had been conducted over a long period of time in Michigan that pointed out the level of damage that was done to newborns that were born prematurely. They were born underweight, a higher death rate. There was a lower rate of fertility. And that was the first time they had a study that actually put cause and effect to genetics. So there's no, we've kind of said, well, we know it's bad, but we haven't been able to quantify it. We are beginning to get studies that actually do quantify it. And as Senator Peterson was saying, and Mr. Sink, that we need to restore the positions that were cut, the budget cuts from the Republicans, and give the DEQ greater authority. We need to increase the fine so that the corporations actually feel the pain of the damage that they've done. They need to pay to clean up their own messes.
Are you ready, Carol?
How do I get back in? My screen went out.
We can see you.
Okay, maybe I'm having the same trouble as Mr. Davis. All right. I can't see people, so you'll have to tell me who's
I will.
speak. All right. We're going on to the second question, unless Ms. Butler or Mr. Kennedy wants to speak.
I'll pass on that. I think it's been all said.
Question then, I will start with Mr. Peterson. One of the causes of health disparities among people of color is a lack of health coverage. When elected, what will you do to address that gap?
Harper, you gotta unmute yourself. I'll start
We
this.
know today, under the umbrella of the COVID virus, there are over 650,000 hardworking men and women in this state that fall within the income bracket between poverty levels and access to affordable health care. They have access to Medicaid if the state legislature would agree to receive that. States throughout the country, both Republican and Democrat, have received it. It provides affordable, quality, accessible health care. And we know the stress and trauma that these hard-hitting men and women and their children face every day. It's inhumane. It's unconscionable that we don't allow Medicaid expansion. It's federal money. 90% is federal money. It won't cost the taxpayer anything. It creates jobs in rural areas. It supports rural hospitals. And it affects your policy and my insurance policy. It's proven to be up to 8 to 10% relief at that level as well.
All right. And is anyone else raising their hand to speak to that question?
I don't see any yet.
I'd like to speak, if I may, Ted Davis.
Ed?
Okay, go ahead.
I'll talk fast. I just like to say that I co-sponsored House Bill 655, which is entitled the North Carolina Health Care for Working Families. It is designed for uninsured working individuals between the ages of 16 and 64 that earn too much to qualify for Medicaid, but not enough to afford private health insurance coverage. There are some requirements that would go with this program. One of those would be that an individual would pay a premium of 2% of their annual household income, affordable co-payments. There's also a mandatory employment activities requirement, but that can be waived or under certain conditions that are in the bill. The important thing about this is that the insurance will require nothing in new state appropriations or new personal taxes. The federal government will continue to pay 90% of the cost. The remaining 10% would be funded through a combination of the participant premiums and assessment on healthcare providers. And the safety valve is that the federal government reduces below the 90% of medical assistance, then the program would stop. Thank you.
All right, anybody else?
I do.
Carol, I'd like to speak to that.
David had his
I would too
hand
at
up
some point.
first.
Carol, I'd like to speak to that, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, let's set the record straight on this. The best, fastest, easiest, most expeditious way to handle this is a clean Medicaid expansion. We've been talking about it for 3 years. Ted's proposal wants to muck it up with work requirements and premium requirements, which are proven to be inefficient and to cast people off the system once they're on it. The cleanest, best, most efficient way to get North Carolinians covered with the money they have already paid is a clean Medicaid bill expansion. But the truth is, they will not allow Governor Roy Cooper to have a victory at any cost. That is it, plain and simple. 39 other states have expanded Medicaid successfully. They all, without fail, say they would do it again. This is political posturing, and it is ridiculous. It is time, past time, to expand Medicaid in North Carolina and give people the care they deserve.
David has his hand up.
Go ahead.
Yes. Well, I was waiting for Deb Butler to say, Mr. Speaker, I will not yield. But this is just common sense. I mean, it's 90% paid for by the federal government, and we've got an additional 650,000 people that need it the most in North Carolina. So it goes back to we have just got to get away from the political posturing of this and do what is best for the people. And that is to unequivocally, without any attachments, pass Medicaid in the state of North Carolina. And I guarantee you a significant percentage of the state populace that'll benefit from this are right here in our own southeastern North Carolina. Mr. Speaker, I will now yield. Thank you.
All right.
This is Michael.
Okay.
Medicaid was intentionally a program for public health for low-income mothers, seniors, children that are disabled and the blind. A broad-based Medicaid expansion will cost $4 to $6 billion. We already have 20% of the residents, North Carolina residents, on Medicaid, and then to increase the cost by that much would jeopardize the program for those who the program was intended to help. So yes, we do need to find some kind of gap, a safety valve for those within the gap, as Representative Davis has mentioned, but we can't have broad-based expansion for able-bodied working adults that don't have children until we cover those who need it most first. The innovations waiver that covers the IDD population that was expanded under Medicaid when I was there They attempted to do it in the last legislative session, but because we didn't have a budget, it was voted against. We couldn't expand Medicaid to those who need it the most, and that's where we need to start.
Anybody else? Hearing none?
Sure,
We'll
I'll
to the-
go.
Have
I'll
Warren.
go.
Okay, go ahead.
Who was that?
It was Warren Kennedy. Go ahead.
Right, go ahead.
Yes, just real quick, if I might. There was a 2019 study that showed that our Medicaid here in North Carolina is plagued with problems, and it's of utmost concern that we fix those problems. I look at expanding Medicaid with the problems that it has is like putting down new wall-to-wall carpet when you've got a leaky roof in every room of the house. So we need to look at Medicaid, fix the problems. Then once those problems are fixed, and they need to be fixed quickly, we can look at the expansion of Medicaid. Thank you.
And Adam?
Yes, thank you. This is becoming a purely ideological issue. You know, states run by Republican governors, Democratic governors have passed this expansion all across the country. We have to ask ourselves, healthcare is a right for all of us, not a privilege for those who can afford it. We approach this problem to the detriment of our state if that's what we're going to do, treat it as a privilege. The stopgap measures and the half measures aren't going to cut it anymore. There's hundreds of thousands of people suffering. There's people who continue to suffer through this COVID crisis because of lack of healthcare. People have lost their jobs, and it's time we really start working for the people who need it and stop the ideological struggle. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Morgan, you.
Yeah, just very quickly, I want to agree with my colleagues who've said what needs to be said. It's time for us to take care of our most vulnerable friends and our neighbors, period. We need to get this fixed.
All right, thank you. Question number 3, Mr. Sink, you can start. This is a question. K-12 per pupil spending in North Carolina adjusted for inflation remains below 2008-2009 levels. What are your priorities for funding all aspects of education in North Carolina?
Well, it's an embarrassment to hear those percentages. So first thing we have to do is increase spending in education across the board for our public schools, for our community college system, and for the university system, but specifically to get that cost per pupil up. And before my opponents jump on me and say, oh, all you do is throw money at it and raise taxes, the money is already there. We have to revisit how the money for the North Carolina Educational Lottery is being spent and make sure that around 95% of that money needs to go to public schools. I've never been able to get a straight answer on what, right now, this very minute, what percentage of the educational lottery goes to public education. And I would buy a dinner for any of you on the screen that can tell me exactly what that percentage is. So yes, we need to do a better job, and we can do better with our public education system.
Anybody else? Gail, you see any hands?
I'd like to say something if I may. Ted.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to direct a comment concerning education to teachers. I have voted for consecutive teacher raises since I've been in Raleigh. And one thing that people, I hope, will understand, that when you are looking at the total compensation package for our teachers, not only should you consider their salary, but you should also consider the fact that the state contributes $6,084 per year toward the cost of their health insurance, as well as 12.97% of their salary with no local supplement, which would be $5,188 per year for a teacher earning $40,000. So once again, when you're looking at what we give our teachers, you need to look at the whole package to see all of the salary plus the benefits. I'd also like to say that I've always supported education from being a county commissioner till I go to Raleigh. And I was also responsible for millions of dollars in funding to help establish the local Southeastern Area Technical Vocational High School, known as Tech, and I'm very proud of that. Thank you.
Right. Anyone else?
I'll have a crack at it.
Is that Adam?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, 23 years of being a teacher nets you a salary of $50,000. I don't know any other profession where you spend your entire working career working with everyone's kids, earning poverty wages. We have some of the best teachers in the country in this state. 20% of all the national board certified teachers reside and work in North Carolina. That's the highest level of certification. Many of our teachers have advanced degrees. We need to pay our teachers like the professionals they are and not give them dribs and drabs and little bits of compensation. We need to really treat them like professionals, just like every other professional. So they don't have to have second jobs on the weekends, and they can devote all their time to what they love to do, which is teach our kids. Thank you.
You have Harper first.
Thank you, Adam. You hit it. Teachers are the most important professionals in our community, bar none. Education is the pathway to our economy. We are a state of education leaders, going back to Terry Stanford, Governor Jim Hunt, and now Governor Cooper. The business community knows how important it is to have an educated population. And my Republican colleagues like to point out that they raise teacher salaries and benefits every year. Then why do teachers and their assistants have to hold a second and third job and can't afford an apartment, a quality of life they deserve? Again, it's our tax policy. We need to shift and take the benefits away from the rich and the corporate beneficiaries and take it off the backs of hardworking men and women and invest that money in education, public education.
And Marcia.
We absolutely need to invest the money in our teachers, because that also represents not only that we respect them as the professionals that they are, but they are taking care of our most treasured resources, the children of this state. We have got to show them the respect and the support. I mean, look at what we're doing to them right now. We're putting them into a dangerous environment where their own lives are at risk in order to try and teach the children where they may have children at home. They're trying to teach online courses. They're trying to teach in-person classes. We're putting a terrible strain on them. And like it's been said before, they're having to work 2 and 3 jobs. We've got situations where the teachers that have the master's degree may not be getting the benefit of a salary jump that they used to have. It's criminal that people have to go out and teach and work a second and third job in order to take care of our children. We've got to fix this.
Anybody else?
One observation, please.
Go ahead.
You know, I just want to make one observation. In my tenure as a representative, I get 1 million emails. And far and away, the lion's share that I receive are from teachers who ask me why North Carolina doesn't value their service, why they are so taken for granted and dismissed. And, you know, when you really analyze the dollars and the statistics adjusted for inflation, our teachers are making 13% less than they did in 1970 when I was in the 3rd grade. And 20,000 teachers do not show up on the Halifax Mall in Raleigh to protest their conditions unless something is critically broken in public education. It's about values. Either you value public education or you rather put our dollars into little corporate profit streams, as the Republicans in leadership have chosen to do.
Yeah, Michael.
Right.
When I was in the legislature, we voted to increase additional funding of over $700 million. We raised teacher pay 4 or 5 consecutive times. My opponent voted against a raise in the budget, several times because he supports the governor's agenda and not our agenda. But it's really not money alone. Our districts are trapped in a broken one-size-fits-all model of education, and it's geared toward testing and not learning. We've got to have a model with accountability that doesn't force this adherence to this broad guidance, except for the whole entire state. It just doesn't make sense for every single district. And that's why I introduced the Renewal School District that gives a district the freedom to spend education funding based on their unique needs in their district, with personalized learning really at the core. We've really got to put education back in the hands of our educators and back in the hands of the local area. No two districts are the same. We shouldn't treat them the same. The Renewal School District legislation I proposed, the pilot program, is receiving national accolades. People are visiting from all over the United States to see what they're doing there. And I think it's great, and we need to expand it to New Hanover County.
Sorry about the clock. I thought it was going.
I tried to talk fast because I knew it was only a minute anyway.
Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, we're to question number 4, and that will go first to Ms. Butler. All right, there is currently $26.6 million of unused funds in the Opportunity Scholarship budget. Given the increased funding needs under COVID-19, do you think this money should be returned to the general education budget? Why or why not?
Yes, in fact, the governor's proposal, the Democrats and the governor's proposal attempted to claw that money back, to repurpose it and put it back into our economy. You know, again, it's just sitting there and it's not meeting our ever-present needs. So yes, absolutely. We need to go through our budget, find where the pockets of money exist that can be better used and repurposed to get us out of this economic crisis we find ourselves in. So the answer is yes.
Anybody else? No takers? All right.
I got it right here. I'm here.
So,
Is that Adam?
Hello. Harper?
Go ahead, Mr. Harper.
Hi.
Harper, go ahead.
We learned today that the governor is going to allow K through 5, I believe, to reopen if that's the prerogative of the individual districts. Teachers are going to need PPEs, excuse me. They're going to need to have all the safety supplies they need to open safely, to have a healthy environment. That's where this money could have been used, right there. We have to protect the environment, the health of our environment and schools if we're going to have a successful reopening. And again, that money sits unused, and what a perfect opportunity to invest in our schools.
Anybody else?
I'll go, Adam.
Adam.
go ahead, Adam.
Timer's on. Thank you. We definitely need to put that money back where it belongs, into our public schools. You know, the Leandro report that came out in December 2019 showed that our state is $3.5 billion short of fulfilling our duty, our constitutional duty in this state, to providing each child with a sound basic education. Now, the legislature has created an automatic 10 million increase in this Opportunity Scholarship Fund per year, of which many millions of it sit unused. So it's time to rethink this. You know, taxpayer dollars going to this situation for outside the public school system should not be allowed. We should end that program.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Ted Davis, if I may.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I take a little different view of this. I don't believe that all of it should be turned over as has been suggested in the past, because this money would provide lower income individuals the opportunity to get a quality education of their choice. Now, I'm always willing to look at anything to see if there's any fat in it that we might be able to cut away in order to streamline our expenses and help out as far as our budget. So while I wouldn't certainly be willing to take a look at what's been suggested, I don't take a carte blanche, just throw it away and put it back into the general fund, because once again, I think we should allow the lesser income people to be able to get an education of their choice. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Michael Lee?
Yeah, I mean, just so the listeners understand, I mean, these are opportunity scholarships or funding to give low-income families the opportunity for their child to go somewhere else other than the school that they're districted in. So I don't think we should take away opportunities from children to put it back into a fund for general education. I mean, these kids, if you talk to any of them that have utilized this opportunity scholarship, it transforms their lives. And everyone keeps talking about funding. You talked about, some folks have talked about Leandro, and they keep talking about per capita funding. It's not just the money. The Leandro report will tell you it's not just the money. We have to take a hard look about reforming education in North Carolina. And a lot of people just want to talk about money because they don't want to dig in the policy and solve some of the really difficult problems that the Leandro report identifies and the solutions that the Leandro report says that we need to figure out.
Anybody else on that question? Not hearing anything. We'll go to question number 5, and I will give that one to Mr. Davis. Private sector childcare averages $8,000 to $11,000 per year in our area. Over 17% of the average family's income. What plans do you have to increase access to quality, affordable childcare and early child education for lower income families?
Well, thank you for the question. And obviously that's a budgetary item that will need to be addressed when the General Assembly is in session and we're looking at our 2-year budget. I understand the need for childcare so that working parents can be able to work. And I also understand what you're talking about as far as I understand it, early development with our education. So once again, I support everything that we can do for working parents so that, and that being supporting the child care so that they can work. I also support early development with our children. And obviously I have voted for budgets that have funded those things, and I will continue to do so.
All right, anybody else? No hands again? Right, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you. I'd like to remind Mr. Davis and other Republicans that it was a Republican legislature that cut child care tax credits along with earned income tax credits for families earning below $50,000 a year. They love to take the money and give it to the rich and the big corporations, the wealthy, and put the tax burden through service and sales tax on the hardworking men and women of this state. And this is one example where the Republicans have turned their back on child care expenses. It's hard enough when you have a living wage or a minimum wage of $7.25 to get by, to provide the essentials. And child care is one of those essentials along with food and housing and medicine. And shame on them.
Anybody else?
Yeah, you have Marcia?
Marcia?
It doesn't really qualify as childcare, but it kind of would fit in that same category. If we look at the pre-K programs and the investment, if it goes there, it in a way does provide a form of childcare, but it's a very important one for the development of the children. The programs have shown that the kids that get to go through these pre-K experiences learn to read better. They are more likely to graduate from high school. They are more likely to get a job. They are more likely to stay out of prison. I think that there's a tremendous benefit to investing in like I said, the pre-K program. Having worked in Head Start, I had the opportunity to see how much a child can develop over a several-month period of time. And it's a fantastic opportunity to give these kids a leg up and to get a good start in their school year.
Carol,
Anybody
I'd
else?
like to add something, Carol.
Okay, go ahead.
This is philosophically the difference right now between Republicans and Democrats. You know, look, this is the crowd who's been in leadership for the last decade. They've cut master's pay, right? They've cut the teaching fellows program. They've allowed the proliferation of charter schools that don't have to provide nutrition or transportation for poor students. They've allowed this opportunity scholarship. Let's call it what it is. It's vouchers, right? And poor people have found it unwieldy. That's why there's money left in it, because it's not working for poor and low wealth families. There's a philosophical difference about allowing a good quality, constitutionally mandated education for all of our children, as found in the West Ed bulletin about the Leandro case. So let's just talk straight about it. This is the crowd who has undermined the legacy of Sanford and Hunt, and it is Democrats that want to rebuild it.
You have Michael Lee.
When I was in the legislature, I worked to create the B3 Interagency Council, which is birth through third grade. We all knew how important early childhood education was, but the system was broken. So we had an interagency council with experts in the pre-K grades to get together to work on fixing the system. I think we're number 20 in the state on what the state funds for pre-K, but we're number 9 in the nation when it comes to overall funding for our pre-K, our children. You know, we need to look at transitions, and this is what we did on the B3 because I was on the interagency council. We looked at transitions and continuity with students coming from pre-K to kindergarten through middle school, high school, and post-secondary with funding attached. We need a system where educators and policymakers can make data-driven decisions to drive important outcomes. We worked on that, and the experts, I'm not on there because I'm not a legislator anymore, but the experts are still working on it. And then workforce development, teacher recruitment, preparation, funding for salaries. These are the things we have to work on. It's not just throwing money at a system, but reforming a system so we can improve outcomes for children.
Right. Anybody else?
I'll go.
Adam?
Adam? Yes, thank you. Yeah, I don't think that that throwing money at things is the way to look at this. As Marcia mentioned, this is about investment. We need to invest in our kids, invest in our families, invest in our future. Investing in education is one of the best things we can do. And investing in early childhood gives us one of the best indicators of how children are going to perform later in life, how successful they're going to be. You show me kids who have a great start in life, and I'll show you successful kids who are productive citizens. I don't believe we're just throwing money at education. I think we have to manage the money well. That's what we're tasked with as legislators. But we need to invest in our kids. It's good for our future, good for our economy, good for everyone. Thank you.
Hearing no more, we'll go to the next question. The 2020 census is coming to an end. Data from this effort will be used to draw voting districts for the North Carolina Senate, the North Carolina House, and the U.S. House. What resources do you think should be used to ensure that these districts are drawn fairly, regardless of the party in power?
That's to me, right?
Yes, to Adam, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Adam.
Okay, thank you. Well, gerrymandering is one of the biggest affronts to our democratic way of life. It prevents the will of the people from being heard. So it is imperative that we draw fair districts. Now, I know that there's a long history in this state, which predates me, of a back and forth and an unfairness. But we need to set the record straight now and set up a fair commission, an independent commission that will draw these districts fairly. You know, the congressional districts in this state are a disgrace. They're a national disgrace. They're an embarrassment. We have 70% of the legislators to the U.S. Congress are in the Republican Party in a swing state, purple state, whatever you want to call it, with less than 50% of registered voters being Republicans. It's a patently unfair and we need to fix this system, and we can do it in a bipartisan, fair, independent way. It's good for democracy, and it's good for the people of this state. And
Okay, I
Thank
have to cut you off.
All right. Anybody else have a comment on that?
David?
I'd love to comment.
I would like to comment. I think in one sentence, gerrymandering is wrong. It was wrong for the last 10 years. It was wrong for 100 years when the Democrats did it. It is time to make sure that we have an independent professional group that redraws these lines so that they are fair and is not based on partisan politics on either side of the fence. It is way past time to make sure that the fox does not guard the hen house anymore.
David, you are muted for some reason now.
Well, I don't know what happened, but anyway, I was just saying it's time to make sure that the fox is not in charge of the hen house, and we get out of the General Assembly who's in charge of redistricting. We'd have an independent professional group to draw those lines fairly.
Anybody else on that question?
Yes, Ted Davis.
All right.
Thank you. And I really appreciate that question and opportunity to respond. In 2018, I don't normally sign pledges, but I did sign a pledge to support the creation of an independent, nonpartisan redistricting process for congressional and legislative districts. And I lived up to that promise because during the 2019 long session, I co-sponsored House Bill 69, which addressed a nonpartisan redistricting commission. So I totally support that being done, and I'll continue to support that being done. Thank you.
Let me say, please, one thing, Carol, about that.
Go
You know
ahead.
what? Ted and I don't agree on much, but I will say this. He opposed this for a very long time. And in fact, he said he just didn't think it could be done. Now, I don't want to think that he did it for political reasons. Perhaps he did. I don't care how he got there. I'm glad he took that pledge. But the truth is, the rest of his caucus did not. So my fear is that he believed it to be a safe position. You'll recall that his rule chairman, David Lewis, who is under federal indictment right now, is the one who drew these abysmal congressional districts that were done with racial and partisan surgical precision. So let's face it, North Carolina is a place of scorched earth politics. The New York Times acknowledged as much. And we are a poster child for all things wrong and evil in terms of redistricting. And so I'm glad he's at the position he is now, but I have to wonder how he got there.
All right. Anybody else?
You have Michael Lee.
This is Michael Lee. Ideally, we would have a nonpartisan process to draw the districts. Other states have done it. Some are in the process. And I think we should look and see how the results are with those states and what process works the best. I think the only thing that we would need to make sure that we did was to amend our Constitution, because our Constitution requires it to be the way it is. And if we're going to change it, it shouldn't be by statute. It should be by an amendment to the Constitution. So another legislature just can't change their mind, 2 years later, which is what will happen if you just have a statute. So hopefully we'll find a way to have independent redistricting maps drawn, and we'll modify and amend the Constitution so no future legislature can unwind it.
Anybody else?
Harper?
Mr. Peterson?
Harper, you're muted.
I wish the Republican leadership would follow Mr. Lee's suggestion, because when they were approached in this last session about that very idea and path, they didn't want to respond. They said, we'll wait until the election is over in 2020, but we support nonpartisan fair district maps, but we'll just wait and see what happens in 2020. We do need a constitutional amendment, and I think from my perspective, I'm running in a purple district, evenly matched against my opponent in terms of party affiliation. I like it that way because I can run on issues and the citizens can respond to those issues and vote with the knowledge that they're electing someone that will represent them. I think that's important and essential to democracy. Thank you.
All right, the only person who hasn't commented, Ms. Morgan, does she have a comment on that? Okay.
I think it's pretty much been covered. We just need to make sure that we have the voters selecting their representatives, not the other way around.
Okay, one more on voting. What is your view, and this is, we start with Mr. Kennedy. What is your view of automatic voter registration?
I'm not a supporter of automatic voter registration. North Carolina's always had that when you turn of legal voting age, you make a visit and you register to vote. However, there is a process where you do it at the time that you get your driver's license. So I think the way we are now set up has worked well, and we should continue as it's always been. Why change something if it's not broke?
Anybody else on that question?
Well, I'll have to go ahead and take the contrary position. We need to expand the franchise of voting. I don't know if you're aware of this, but in the last presidential election, only 55% of those registered chose to vote. I will have to say that women outpaced men in their voting habit, which, you know, again, I'm proud of. But the truth is, that's far too few people voting. We need to teach more civics. We need to encourage people to understand the importance of the vote, and we need to expand the franchise, not in any way limit it. You know what? If you're afraid of the voter, you're doing something wrong. Let's let the people vote. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'll go ahead. I'll go ahead.
I'll go back.
This is Adam.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. We need to expand the franchise as much as possible. That's been the entire process since the foundation of this country. As a civics teacher, I know and try to teach and instill in my kids the importance of participatory democracy. We typically elect our president with barely 25% of the registered voters in this country. That is not democracy. That is a travesty of democracy. We need more people to vote. It's a good thing for our democracy. The will of the people needs to be heard. And, you know, I'd like to see an expansion of the voter base rather than a contraction, which is what's been going on in this state for a number of years. Attempts to limit voting rather than expanding it. Thank you.
Anybody else showing up? Gail?
Gail Harper.
Mr. Peterson?
Thank you. I think every citizen has a right to vote. That's fundamental to our democracy. And we realize there's been an inequity over the course of our history, primarily with Black African-American citizens. We saw that through the Jim Crow era and poll taxes. We see it now with requirements or interest in a voter ID. Every obstacle is thrown up in the way of a citizen achieving his right to vote and participate in democracy. We see that today from the federal government, from our president and attorney general, suppressing the vote, putting fear in the populace. That's not America. That's not democracy at work. There's an urgency to address this issue, and I think it begins with the opportunity for every citizen to cast their vote in every election.
Any more hands?
Anybody else?
Yes, I'd like to, Ted Davis.
Go ahead.
Yes, well, thank you very much. I think we're getting a little out of context here. I mean, automatic voter registration, no, I do not support that. I believe when a person reaches the age of vote, they can take the responsibility to go down and register to be a voter, and then they can take the responsibility to go down to the polls and vote on election day. And I don't understand any of this rhetoric that's being told about how people are being prohibited from voting when all that has been done on the Republican leadership since I've been in the House is to expand the time that people have to vote, expand the opportunity that people have to vote, and expand the right for people to go out and exercise their right to vote. So let's just tell it the way it is. So I believe that we're on a good track of allowing people abundance of opportunity, not only to register, but also to vote as well. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'd like to speak to that.
Yep.
You know, that's pretty laughable, honestly, because you've done nothing but put impediments to voting. You might have expanded the time, but you've put voter ID on voters. You've tried to deprive people who've committed crimes from the ability to rejoin the voting ranks. I mean, the list goes on and on of the disenfranchisement in North Carolina. I mean, it's legendary. You know, so to suggest that you've expanded the times while putting all these other barriers is not reasonable. So anyway, we'll let the folks decide.
Okay. Ms. Morgan, you have the next question first. And the next question is, women are paid 82 cents for every dollar paid to men, which amounts to an annual gender wage gap of $10,194. Do you feel that this gender wage gap needs to be addressed in North Carolina for North Carolina women? And if not, why not? And if so, how would you address it?
I absolutely believe that it should be addressed as the offspring of a single parent, a single mother, trying to raise 4 kids by herself. I watched firsthand as she did the same job as her male counterpart, which happened to work out to be a vice principal in a school. She had more experience. She had 4 kids, but they said he was head of household. She had a wife, neither of them had children, both worked, so that wasn't fair. I had the opportunity to go in the military where women received the same pay for the same job, and I think that that's the way it should be now. We need to go back and make sure that we have equal pay for everyone. We need to raise the minimum wage so that everyone has the ability to earn a living wage. And I think it's just one of the matters of equity that we need to address immediately.
Anybody else? No more hands, Gail?
I'd like to say something.
Harper and Dave and Ted.
All right, Mr. Peterson first.
Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
No, sir, I will yield to you.
It's an inequity that's obvious. Why would we pay women less than men for an equal service? And compounded by the fact that minority women make less than white women in the workplace. It's a prejudice, it's an injustice, it needs to be corrected. It can begin with the state of North Carolina passing the Equal Rights Amendment. I think that's long overdue, and that will take place in 2021 when the Democrats win the State House and Senate.
All right, Mr. Davis.
Yes, thank you. I definitely think that women should have the same job opportunities as men, and I definitely think that women should pay the same as men for equal service. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yes, I have a comment. I have a 14-year-old granddaughter in school in Charlotte, and she asked me the other day, why do men for doing the same job as women get more pay? And specifically, why has not North Carolina passed the Equal Rights Amendment? And so I said, well, I'm going to have an opportunity to hopefully debate and listen to some politicians. And so I posed the question, what can I tell my granddaughter as to why the Equal Rights Amendment has not been passed by those of you who are currently serving in the North Carolina General Assembly? So just tell me what I can tell my granddaughter.
Well, that would be, the two people have already spoken on this issue that are in the legislature. So you'll have to ask them on your own.
Did
Mr. Kennedy.
Michael Lee already talk on this?
No,
Well,
this
he's
is
not
Michael
in the
Lee.
legislature at present, but he can go ahead and answer.
Okay.
I'm not in the legislature right now, no. This is Michael Lee, and absolutely, it goes without question. I think everybody here agrees women should be paid as much as men. And the gap actually, the gap was closing until a few years ago. And a lot of people think that the gap dissolves the higher you get in your education level. And actually the opposite is true. And I absolutely think that women should be paid as much as men for any given education level or job.
So let me ask you this, Michael, if you are reelected to that position, you're going to support the Equal Rights Amendment? You're going to help me put it on the floor of the Senate and pass it?
So the Equal Rights Amendment was initiated how long ago?
Many years.
30 years ago, before all the discrimination laws that we now have on the books.
Ratified by Nevada, by the way. So we, it's still it's still possible.
And it was initiated before we had all the discrimination laws on the books that we have today.
So the answer is no.
So let me speak. Let me speak, Deb.
Will you help?
I know you like to interrupt me, but let me speak. So we need to find out why the sex discrimination laws, if that is the case, we need to find out why they're not being affected, as opposed to ratifying an amendment to the Constitution that's over 30 years old.
Okay, so the answer is no. Thanks very much.
Does anybody else have a comment? Adam?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, equal pay for equal work, period. I want my daughter to not be discriminated against based on her gender. I want my wife and daughter to make the same as everyone else for what they do. Women keep this world going. They have kids, they have careers, they keep the family together when everything's falling apart. They need to be paid the same amount as everyone. And equal rights is a necessity. If it's not going to happen organically, we're going to have to make it happen. And I think that's a good thing. I think we have to continue the fight for equal rights for all people.
All right. Is that it for everyone? I can't see. All right.
Excuse me, Carol. Excuse me. This is Clarice Reber. I'd like to remind the candidates to stay with the policy of the forum. Please speak when you're asked. Thank you.
All right. The next question is, excuse me. Do you oppose?
Carol,
What?
you probably want to do closing because we're at just about 8:15 now.
Okay.
We did get everybody the first question at this point.
Right. I just had more questions to ask. All right. We will start with Ms. Morgan. Would you start with your closing statement?
All right, thank you. And again, thank you for the opportunity to speak to all of the folks here and to respond to those questions. I think it's important that as we move forward, we establish the fact that we've got some basic issues that need to be addressed. First of all, as we're looking at this pandemic, we need to look at basic health care for everyone. Affordable health care that people can take care of their families. We need to have a quality education, an opportunity for all of the children to have that education so that they can move forward, that they can advance however they want to. And we need to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to have clean water and clean air, and that we hold the corporations liable that violate those standards. Along with that, we need to make sure that we pursue equality and respect for everyone, and that we promote our economy. There are some basic things that we have to work on as we move forward in the year ahead. I ask that you vote for me, House District 19. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Kennedy, closing statement.
I do not see him any longer up
Oh,
here.
really? Okay. Mr. Erickson then.
Thank you. The situation we're in, the COVID pandemic, has impacted all of us in North Carolina. It's exposed the glaring needs across the state. Unaffordable health care, lack of good paying jobs, underfunded education, and really a shocking lack of stewardship of the environment. These issues did not just appear suddenly. They've been with us for a while. I feel that special interests have drowned out the voices of hardworking people. We are facing daunting challenges, no doubt about it. Our budgets have been decimated. Years of tax cuts, poor budget decisions. Our public services are stretched to the max, and they've been neglected at a time when we need them the most. So I think it's time that we start putting our hardworking families first, that we
Adam,
fund
I
our
can
schools.
cut you off. I'm sorry.
Are we over? Okay. Sorry.
Ms. Butler?
Well, thank you very much. I just would say in closing that it has been my privilege to serve in this role for the last 3 years. I do think that I have demonstrated a commitment for tenacity and hard work and speaking the truth. You know, that's really all there is in this world. You care about the people you serve, you speak the truth, you defend it with everything you've got. I'm not always the smartest one in the room. I'm not always the most calm, but I care about what I'm doing, and I speak the truth and I defend it, and I'm hardworking, and again, I'd love the privilege to continue to serve in this role. I've risen to leadership pretty quickly. I think that's testament to how hard I work, and it is my privilege again to serve the people of Eastern North Carolina.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Davis?
Yeah.
Mr. Davis?
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to repeat my opening statement, and that is, in this time of uncertainty, we need a proven leader who can be trusted to get the job done. I have the experience and knowledge to lead us through the challenges our state government is facing as we deal with the impact from the coronavirus on our economy, schools, and healthcare. And in the time I have left, I would like to thank my opponent for teaching at New Hanover High School. I graduated from there. My son graduated from there, and hopefully my grandson will be going there. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sink. Mr. Sink?
Thank you. In my opening remarks, I mentioned several items on my platform. The rest of my platform is really just entrenched in common sense. I think that love is love, and I think the LGBTQ community deserves all rights. I believe in science. I believe that I know unequivocally I will fight for injustice when I get into North Carolina State Senate. I have already spoken that we need to pass the ERA, and absolutely all lives do not matter until Black lives matter as well. I think the COVID virus needs to be a scientific debate and not a political debate. And I will fight for the safety and the well-being of all people in southeastern North Carolina when I get in the North Carolina State Senate. And I end by saying I'm a little angry, but it's a righteous anger because my opponent is not here. He feels like these kinds of events are beneath him. And so I will always be transparent and will represent the citizens of southeastern North Carolina when I get into Senate.
All right, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you. And I want to especially thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity. I think it's been a great forum, and my hat off to you. The core issues remain accessible, affordable, quality healthcare, reinvestment in our public education, living wages, job creation, protecting our environment, and requiring clean drinking water. As we move forward, we know the world has changed right before our eyes. And when we come out of the COVID virus, these challenges will face us in the future. The leadership we need is people like Deb Butler, and Adam Erickson and Marcia Morgan, who are logical, thoughtful, they listen, they believe in science, and they want the best for every citizen. Recently, I received an award for the North Carolina League of Conservation Voters as Senator of the Year. I also received recognition from the North Carolina Chamber of Commerce as Jobs Champion. These two work together. You can be both. You can be a tree hugger, a conservationist, and you can be somebody that's creative and wants to create jobs for every man and woman in this state. And education is the key, the doorway to a healthy economy. I will support every effort towards that end. Thank you.
All right, and finally, Mr. Lee.
Thank you for having me here tonight. Clean water. I passed legislation that gave the governor the power to shut down polluters, a solution to make them pay, and a solution through the collaboratory in UNC to clean the water, filter it out. I was asked to speak at the Association for the Advancement of Science in Seattle with Dr. DeWitt from ECU to talk about what we did because it's the new standard for the rest of the United States. Harper has done nothing, not passed one bill. Education. We need education reform that includes increasing funding for our schools and continue to increase teacher pay from birth to post-secondary. We have to have education reform and not just additional funding. I hope you've learned a little bit more about me this evening. Since we only have a minute, I'm going to wrap up. But if you want to know more, go to my website, leefornc.com, or don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. I'd love to talk to you. Thank you for having me this evening, and I look forward to November.
Carol, Kennedy is back.
Mr. Kennedy is back, yeah.
All right, Mr. Kennedy, let's have your closing statement, sir.
God, he's
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I want to close to point out something sort of ironic. Tonight, we've heard the Democrats stress the need to invest in our children, be it by education, health care. They've stressed the right to clean water and air for everybody, especially our children, and that when they grow up, equal wage. And I support all of those things, but I want to point out to the viewers tonight that it's the Democrats who voted against the Born Alive Act here in North Carolina, which would have killed or ensured that babies born alive after an botched abortion would be given quality health care. And I just find it disturbing that they would vote to not give a newborn the health that care they needed, but yet then talk about all the things they talked about tonight. I appreciate your vote in November.
All right. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of the Lower Cape Fear, the YWCA of the Lower Cape Fear, and the Coastal Review Online, a publishing arm of the North Carolina Coastal Federation, I would like to thank the candidates for their participation tonight. Our forums will be posted on our website for further viewing. Be sure to plan your vote. You can check out the League of Women Voters of Lower Cape Fear website to find the early voting information site and times in New Hanover County and possibly Brunswick County. And you can check out vote411.org for more candidate information. If you requested a mail-in ballot, we recommend you send it in as soon as possible. The earlier, the better. Thank you again for your participation in our forum tonight. Both those who participated in it and those who watched it and listened. Get out and vote.